colonial Massachusetts, 1692. A small, isolated village, blanketed by thick forests and fog, where suspicion hung in the air like the damp chill of the morning mist. Here, in the dark and unforgiving woods of Salem, terror didn't just whisper from the shadows, it screamed. Tonight, we journey into a nightmare rooted in the cold earth of history, one born not of ghosts or demons, but of very real human cruelty, superstition, and a fear so deep it would tear a community apart. This is the horrifying true story of the Salem Witch Trials. It all began in January of 1692, when a group of young girls in Salem Village started to display strange, violent symptoms, contorting their bodies, screaming in agony, and claiming to see visions of dark figures. Some said they saw shadows following them, felt invisible hands choke them in the night. They accused women in the town of cursing them, of practicing witchcraft. Salem was a community already steeped in fear. The people lived in constant dread of the devil's influence, convinced that Satan walked among them in the guise of the innocent. When the first accusation was made, it spread like wildfire. Each whispered word, each new finger pointed at a neighbor, twisted and warped the very fabric of society. One of the first women accused was a poor, middle-aged woman named Tituba. She was a slave from the West Indies, an outsider in every sense of the word. When questioned under duress, Tituba gave a confession that sent shockwaves through Salem. She spoke of witches meeting in the woods, of pacts with the devil, of rituals and incantations that could curse a person to death. She named others, and that was all it took. Tituba's confession ignited a frenzy, a hysteria that would spiral out of control. And as the accusations piled up, the people of Salem fell into a fevered frenzy, convinced that evil had taken root in their town. Women, men, even children were dragged from their homes, their lives torn apart, their fates sealed in a sea of lies and fear. Sarah Good, a poor beggar woman, was accused next. Sarah Osbourne, an elderly widow, followed. Then Martha Corey, a devout church-goer. The village was consumed by paranoia. No one was safe, not even the pious. The accused were brought before the court, where the girls, Betty, Abigail, and others, would writhe and scream, claiming the witches were tormenting them. The judges believed them. There was no evidence, no proof, just fear. The trials were a mockery of justice. The accused were denied lawyers. They were forced to defend themselves against spectral evidence, visions only the accusers could see. Those who confessed were spared. Those who maintained their innocence were condemned, and the punishments were brutal. On June 10th, 1692, Bridget Bishop became the first to hang. 5 more would follow in July, 5 more in August, and 8 in September. But the most chilling execution was that of Giles Corey. He refused to enter a plea, knowing his land would be seized if he was convicted. The court ordered him to be pressed to death. Heavy stones were laid on his chest, one by one. His last words were, "More weight." Others were dunked into cold, merciless rivers to see if the waters would reject them, as though their very bodies were made of sin. One such woman was Rebecca Nurse, a respected elderly woman of the community. She was accused despite her lifelong service to the church. When she stood trial, she proclaimed her innocence. But the court saw only her calm demeanor as proof of guilt. After all, the devil's servants were said to be unshaken by fear. The trial of Rebecca Nurse was a turning point in the Salem Witch Trials. As she stood in front of the crowd, a small crack appeared in the terrifying facade of the trials. Some began to question the validity of the accusations. But fear has a way of clouding reason. And in the end, it was not reason that won out. On July 19, 1692, Rebecca Nurse was sentenced to die. She was executed by hanging, along with 18 others that fateful summer. But it didn't stop there. In the month that followed, dozens more would meet the same grisly end. The blood of the innocent soaked into the earth, and the village of Salem, once thriving and peaceful, was left haunted by its own actions. Despite the mounting deaths and growing doubt, the witch trials continued. Fear became the village's lifeblood, and the courts refused to acknowledge their error. It was only when the trials were brought to the attention of Governor William Phips, who had originally supported them, that the tide began to turn. In October 1692, he intervened, and the trials were officially halted. By the time the trials ended in 1693, 20 people had been executed. 19 were hanged. 1 was pressed to death. 5 others died in jail awaiting trial. But the horror didn't end there. The accusers began to suffer. Betty Parris fell into a deep silence, never speaking again. Abigail Williams vanished. Some say she fled. Others say something took her. And now, centuries later, the ghost of Salem still lingers, a constant reminder of the horrors that unfolded when paranoia was allowed to take root and fear overtook reason. The innocent who died in those trials, their voices still echo through the centuries, calling out from beyond the grave. Who will answer their cries? Who will remember the forgotten, the cursed souls of Salem? And as the wind howls through the trees, as shadows stretch across the land, do you ever wonder, could it happen again?